Welcome back to the Wild and Kingdom podcast, everybody. We are glad to have you here. We have an exciting episode for you. And just a quick reminder for all of you, maybe this is your first time watching our podcast. If you didn't know, Wild and Kingdom, it exists in two parts. First, it's a show, usually outdoors of some sorts, whether that's hunting, fishing, or specifically today's at the gun range. So there's a show portion, and then we go from the show into the studio and we deep dive the conversation either with our guest or whether it's just me and Jason, which, by the way, today is a first. We have Jason sitting in my chair. He is running the producer board.
Come on.
Yeah, I feel this is a new thing for me. I'm actually
I'm monitoring all your mistakes.
Yeah, I'm actually having a hard time being hands off of this right now. Because even on the God Dog thing, I've never had someone else in control of the board over there. My spaceship, man, as I call it.
That's your baby over there.
That's my baby. So anyways, long story short there, make sure if you haven't seen the show.
I'm going to turn a lot of buttons and blame it on you.
Don't do that. Don't do that. But again, for you guys that are first timers here, this exists in two parts, a show and a podcast. You are listening and watching the podcast portion of today's episode. So if you want to, I think it'd be a great idea for you to go check out the show portion because it'll make the podcast make a lot more sense. But we will talk about that on today's episode too. I am joined in the Wild and Kingdom studio by none other than Mr. Kevin Clow. Thank you for being here, brother.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
So I had the honor to chop it up with you at the gun range this week, talk guns and all the fun things. But what I did not get to do was get your life story, which is funny because we're in a Bible study together.
Yeah, man. What's it been about a year? I've been in that study a year and a half now, and I feel like you and I have started to become friends more recently, which has been great to get to know you. But it's been, I feel like a lot of people come in and out of that Bible study, and you see a lot of the same faces, but you only kind of chum it up with 3 or 4 guys. So it's nice to kind of get to know you.
I agree. It's funny because I told Jason a couple months ago before we were even talking about all this, and I won't say the specifics because I don't even know if it needs to be talked about. We were talking, you specifically were talking about some stuff going on with some Super Bowl related things and security. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, it's the company I work for now.
And so after that day, I texted Jason. I was like, what's that guy's name again? Because whatever he was talking about sounded so freaking interesting.
Oh, cool, man.
So I'm very excited to be doing this.
Yeah.
Again, we're going to talk about a lot of gun stuff, but before we get to that, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know some small details,
man,
but it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, man. I grew up, I'll just give you the skinny right here. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, which is fun. Everyone always asks me where my Boston accent went because I don't really think that I have much of one at all. But it's funny, my mom is from a very small town in Kansas. So I had this really interesting sort of dichotomy growing up where during the school year, I was very much a city kid. I was in the city in Boston. I spent a lot of time going to Red Sox games, Celtics games, was very much a Boston kid. And then in the summertime, we would go to Kansas where my grandpa's farm was in this little town of like 900 people. I think the last census was like 952 or something. It's called Wakefield, Kansas. And we had my grandpa had a cattle lease there. So he was a corn farmer his whole life. And then when he got a little too old to shuck corn, he just converted all the land to pasture and was leasing it out. So I used to go to Kansas in the summertime and basically farm with my grandpa for an extended period of the summer. And so I was, like I said, I feel very blessed to have had this sort of way out in the middle of nowhere. And this is why I think Nashville is such a perfect fit for me, because you have a city that has all these things going on, very much appeals to that side of me. You got pro sports, you got great music, great restaurants, all the things, right? And then you go 25 minutes in any direction and you're out in a farm. And to me, that's the perfect blend that kind of reflects the really kind of dichotomous way that I grew up. So
yeah, which is awesome. And I'll make this really quick. I went to Boston for the first time about a year ago. And I was mind blown because I've never been to a city that big, that packed.
Yeah.
So I was asking everybody that said they were local, like, what'd y'all do for fun? They were like, dude, we did the same thing as you. We just did it on concrete. But they were like, but they didn't know either. They were like, you probably partied in a cornfield. And I was like, well, it was cotton, not corn. But,
yeah, man. You know? Well, it's funny. Since I moved to Tennessee, I've started hunting and really getting into that. I've been into guns my whole life, as we'll dive into. But hunting is kind of a newer thing for me because, growing up in the city of Boston, you're not really shooting a lot of deer downtown Boston. So it's not really as much of an opportunity to do it. But yeah, man, I grew up in Boston, went to college in Boston. I went to Northeastern. I have a degree in sociology and Arabic. Got to study Arabic and go spend some time in Jordan. In my senior year of college, I did a 4-month study of language immersion over there, which will be relevant to kind of how everything kind of changed for me because my whole life flipped while I was in Jordan, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But graduated from college and tried to join the Navy, ended up getting injured, and it kind of took a veer in a different direction. But went to San Diego right after college to go through a course with the Navy called SOAS, which stands for SEAL Officer Assessment Selection. So I've never talked about this outside of my friends in a medium like this where people might listen to it. So I want to be kind of clear right off the rip. Like, I am in no way claiming any connection to the SEAL community. I never went to BUD/S. It was a training that I tried to be part of. But unfortunately some injuries sidelined me. But my life goal my whole life was to become a SEAL, which is kind of relevant to my faith journey because that kind of all fell apart. And
what made you want that? Like, why was that your goal or dream your whole life? Like, what caused that?
Yeah, man. So when I was in 4th grade when 9/11 happened, and my elementary school librarians, I can't remember if it was her brother-in-law or her cousin, someone she was sort of peripherally related to, was a SEAL.
Okay.
And I'd never heard of a SEAL. I don't think anyone in my small town. I come from a town or outside of Boston, like just 10 minutes north, where not a lot of people serve in the military, not a lot of people's families serve in the military. So I had never heard of what the SEALs were, but he deployed pretty much immediately to Afghanistan following 9/11, as if memory serves, pretty quickly.
Okay.
And so at the time, man, every grade school kid was just trying to do their patriotic duty and write letters to the troops. And we sent him books because, obviously our connection was through the library, right? And so when he came back from his deployment, which was towards the end of the school year, he came and he visited our class, and he brought with him, man, he showed us a video about the SEAL teams, and he brought with us some gear and handed out to everyone a poster. And I thought, oh man, I'm getting a poster. I realized in hindsight, it's a recruiting poster that,
Sure.
they hand out like candy, but I framed it and put it on my wall, and it's still on the wall of my bedroom
Really?
at home. Yeah.
Wow.
20 something years later. And so, yeah, man, I made up my mind seeing that video and hearing him talk about what the SEALs were, that I was going to try to become one, and spent the next literally 20 years of my life trying to make that goal happen. Everything kind of ended when I turned 30. But yeah, that was my goal my whole life, man. So
Okay, so you go through high school, and what was the name of the program you mentioned?
yeah, it's called SOAS. So if you're trying to go into the SEALs and you're trying to go as an officer, you go to a course called SOAS, SEAL Officer Assessment Selection. So basically you apply to the Navy and you apply to become an officer specifically. Now there's 3 paths to become an officer. You can go to the Naval Academy, you can go through ROTC, or you can try to go to what's called Officer Candidate School, or OCS. So I was just a civilian all through college. I was trying to get an OCS spot to then get a selection to go to SEAL training. So you submit an application through your recruiter, and then if they think your application is, you might be worthy of going to BUD/S, you get a selection to go to SOAS. And it's basically like BUD/S condensed into 3 weeks. I mean, you're doing all the stuff you see on TV. You're doing the boats and the logs, and you're running along in the soft sand on the beach, and you're laying in the cold water. I mean, it's pretty much the scope of the first phase of SEAL training, as far as I understand it. Again, having never been there, but condensed into a 3-week period. There's psychological evaluations and, lots of physical tests and written evaluations and academic stuff. And then at the end of that, they pick the candidates that they want to send to go to OCS to then go to SEAL training.
So how old were you when you started that?
I was 23 when I graduated college.
And you went straight in?
Yeah, I joined. I mean, I tried to join right after college. I went to the recruiter my senior spring semester and started the process in like December or January of my senior year of college. But my senior year of college, right before that happened, so this kind of ties back to Jordan, I completely blew out my left ankle. Like there's 4 major ligaments in your ankle. I tore 3 of them completely in half. I fell off a roof.
It's a pretty good stat there.
It's 3 out of 4 ain't bad, man.
Yeah.
So while I was in Jordan, I got locked in a building. It's a really stupid story, but basically after class one day, I was taking a foreign affairs class in this government building in Jordan, and just had to use the bathroom after class. I went to the bathroom and came out, and everyone had left and the building was locked down. And so all the windows are barred, all the doors are locked. And I'm like, crap, I'm stuck in this building. So what do I do? So I looked for every kind of opportunity to climb out a window and to check every door. Everything was locked. And, in hindsight, I should have had the humility to just open my cell phone and call and say, hey, I'm trapped in a building. But I think I was part embarrassed and part like, oh, I'm in Jordan studying Arabic to try to join the military and go special operations. Like, I can find my way out of this building and I can rely on myself. And so I remember I couldn't get out of any windows, but I could get onto the roof. And the roof was 3 stories. And then there was a roof of the building that was 2 stories. And so I thought, okay, if I can jump from the 3rd story to the 2nd story, there's a staircase that leads down to the street. I can walk down that staircase and I'll be home free. So, but the problem was there was a giant skylight taking up 90% of the roof. And there was only about a foot wide of concrete to the left of the skylight that I had to sort of stick my landing onto. I have this big heavy backpack and I got all my books from the week, my laptop, backpack probably weighed 30 pounds. And so I go over the edge and I lower myself down and I'm holding onto the ledge of the third story like it's a pull-up bar, right? And I kind of turn over my shoulder to try to spot my landing. And I realize I'm still like 6-7 feet above the next story. And I think there's no way I'm going to drop 7 feet and land on a 1 foot wide slab of concrete and not plummet through the skylight. So I try to climb my way back up, but in doing so, I lost my grip and I just fell like a rock right down, crashed through the skylight. By the grace of God, I'm still here, man, because I literally, my left ankle caught on the roof of the building. 90% of my body's through the skylight in the building. I think one of my arms, maybe I was holding on to the roof, but it was 20 feet below me to a bunch of bookcases. I would have broken my back on them. But by the grace of God, I'm still here, but my ankle was completely blown out. And the crazy thing is, man, I know we'll get to faith as we go along, but I wasn't a Christian at the time. And I remember this is the one time in my entire life when I have heard an audible voice from God. I remember hearing him say, if you jump off this roof, your SEAL career will not happen. And I thought, oh, I'm just hearing things. I can do this. And sure enough, man, blew my ankle out. So I went to SOAS, man, maybe 3 months after that. I came home. I was in a walking cast for a month and a half in Jordan, walking around. All the doctors told me I needed surgery. I came back, went to Mass General, best orthopedic surgeon in the hospital. He said, yeah, you need surgery. I said, I don't have time. I'm joining the Navy literally in 2 weeks. Like, is there any way I can just do physical therapy? Because you can try, but I've seen a lot of ankles and your ankle needs surgery. So I did my best to do physical therapy and kind of healed to a certain extent, but then I started training to go to SOAS after I was accepted to go. And I was running on this bum ankle and I overtrained it and I developed really gnarly Achilles tendonitis in the same ankle. So I have 3 torn ligaments and my Achilles is inflamed. And the only thing you can really do at that point is just like, I was swimming a little bit, but you're just resting, right? I got my ankles messed up. I can kind of train it, but my Achilles is all inflamed. And so I'm just praying. I'm not praying at this point because I don't know who to pray to, but I'm just hoping that my Achilles inflammation will go down in time for me to get to SOAS and go through it. And I ran in college. I was a pretty decent athlete. I was on the triathlon team. So I swam and ran all through college and felt confident that if I could just get there, I could get through it. And I got there on this really bum ankle and I was able to finish the program. I was able to get through the 3 weeks, but man, I was out of shape. My leg was all busted up. I'd lost a lot of muscle in my legs and I wasn't competitive. So I get through the SOAS course, I get through all 3 weeks of it. And then I'm what they call like a 3-week non-select. Like I went through 3 weeks and rightfully so, it was the absolute right decision by the instructor staff, but I did not get selected to continue on in SEAL training. So after that, I was in San Diego and I went up to LA where I had a buddy from high school who was living in LA and I just started crashing on his couch and I had no idea what the next chapter of my life was going to be. And I started driving an Uber just to make some money to buy food, basically, to figure out where I wanted to go. And like 2 weeks into doing that, I picked up someone who was a talent agent in Hollywood.
All right, before you get there, because I don't know anything about that part either. I just heard about it.
Yeah.
How are you mentally feeling about this? It's seemingly a dream coming crashing down. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, man. I was really devastated and I was really searching for direction because at this point,
you were 23, 24
24 at this point when I found out I wasn't selected. I think I just turned 24. And so at that point, it's like a 14-year goal that just kind of didn't happen. And so, yeah, man, I was crushed. I really had no backup plan. I'm not a big plan B guy. I'm a kind of what's the goal and how do I get there kind of personality. Yeah. And so with no plan B, I was really sort of lost and searching for the next chapter, man. And so I was really searching for anything, which is why this next chapter of my life kind of unfolded the way it did.
Yeah, that's a hard place to be. I'm sure, I've already told my vocal story on here and a million times. I'm not going to get back into that. Yeah, but hearing you tell your story, there was a moment in mine where when my vocal cyst started developing and all that, they were like, you don't need surgery. You just need to go through all this therapy. It was like the same thing as yours, but opposite. And I was like, no, I'm trying to do this quickly. Like I got things that I'm trying to get done and I didn't very much so listen at the very beginning. And you look back and go, yeah, I wish I would have treated that differently. But at the same time, you wouldn't be where you were right now if it wasn't for that. And so you got to live in this like middle ground space. If I could have, would have, should have, but at the same time, there was never any other option of being right where you are right now.
Yeah, man. I take a lot of, I find a lot of solace in the notion that the God is sovereign. Yep. So God, nothing is going to happen that God doesn't allow to unfold. That being said, I think you can also learn a lot of lessons from these. Like I look back on 23-year-old, 24-year-old Kevin, and at that time, waiting a year to pursue this dream of mine. Like I've already waited 13 years at this point, 14 years. Like I don't want to wait one more year. Right. I've been waiting my whole life. In hindsight, 1 year is such a small percentage of time that if I had said, okay, I'm gonna get healthy, I'm gonna have the surgery, I'm gonna rehab to a point where I feel strong again, and then I'm gonna join with all the cards in my favor, that's not a very long time to wait in the grand scheme of things. But you don't really realize that when you're 23.
Yeah, and you have to be able to look at the other side and go, but if I would have done that and gone, like, who knows, right? Well, been a completely different life. For the worst.
It could have been, who knows what would have happened, man. I mean, I'm definitely a bit of a clumsy guy, and I get injured a lot. This is not the first injury. It's the first major injury in my life at this point, but I was always getting owies, man. I mean, dude, I didn't even touch on it, but like, my whole life planning on joining the Navy, I did like a Navy youth program in high school called the Naval Sea Cadet Corps, where it was a really badass program. I got to go. Basically, you join the Sea Cadet Corps, and it's essentially the same time commitment as like guard duty in the actual like a National Guard. You do basically a full 2 days a month, so it's 2 Sundays a month, and then in the summertime you get to go and do these amazing trainings. So you go through a boot camp first, but then when I was 16 years old, I was flying in Blackhawks and like blowing up stuff with C4 and going through kill houses at facilities in Virginia Beach where the actual Naval Special Warfare guys train under the supervision of SEALs and EOD guys. But man, I was always they called me Fat Lip because we did this thing where it was us, the 16-year-old, cadets versus like the EOD and the SEAL instructors, and they were shooting at us with paintball guns, and we were shooting at them with blanks. So we can't actually suppress them, but they can shoot at us. And I got hit in the face with a paintball. I fell off my bunk, and I had this big bruise on my leg. Man, I was so injury prone that it became a running joke by the end of the program. So I don't know, man. If I had joined, who knows what would have happened? All I know is I'm sitting here now, and I really love where my life is now, and I'm a big believer. If you love where you're at, you have to love how you got there.
Oh, that's good.
Regardless of what you go through, it got you to where you are. So if you're happy with where you are, which I could not be more pleased with where God has taken me, like everything along the way, you learn to find peace with it.
Sure, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so now we can move back to the LA thing. So you're crashing on a buddy's couch, you start Uber driving for a talent agent guy.
Yeah, well, it was a woman who I believe was a lawyer for the talent agency, and I was like 2 weeks into Uber driving, and she goes, what's your story? Did you move to LA to be an actor? And I was like, no, it's not at all why I'm here. And she goes, well, if you want to go in and meet, I think her name was Krista, who ran the agency. She's like, I'll make an introduction for you if that's something you're interested in. And I was grasping at straws, man. I was looking for anything. And I had a little bit of history with acting. My oldest sister was an actress through high school, and I had done some plays and I did some musical theater in high school, did Grease and a couple other things. And I had a little bit of experience with it, so I was interested in it. And I think I'd done a little bit of background work at that point where I'd been like an extra in some TV shows that I'd filmed in Boston. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go in. And so I went in and met Krista. And then she referred me to this guy, Scott, who sent me out on my first ever audition. It was for a Subaru commercial, and I booked it. I booked my first ever audition in LA, and I just thought, gosh, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Like, I just was looking for anything, and I'd always kind of wanted a job that was not a little left of center. Like, I never wanted to sit in I mean, you're the same way, dude. You understand. Like, I never wanted to sit in a cubicle and, process spreadsheets. I wanted to do something exciting and kind of something that few people do.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I was all about it. And so I got an agent, and I started taking acting classes, and within like a year and a half, I, had found myself into speaking parts on like a half dozen different TV shows, and was like, and it sounds cooler than it is. Like I would get 2 lines in this show, and I'd play the waiter in that show, and I'd play like the boyfriend who has a line in this show, and the customer who buys toothpaste in this show. Like it was fun. It was starting to add up. And I was starting to go further and further and further for shows where, you know, there's something called pilot season in LA where they're filming all the brand new shows. And I was going to producers and I was getting tests, and I was like right on what I would call the 5-yard line of getting on a show as like a regular. And so I had every confidence in the world, like, this is going somewhere. If I stick with this, if I keep working hard at this, because I just went all in. I was like, I'm going to drive Uber on the weekends. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go to bars. I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to work weekends. So I have Monday through Friday completely flexible to like go to an audition at 3:00 in the afternoon and do I was all in, man. And so things were going great. And then I started having a dream every single night that I was a SEAL, every single night. And I was like, man, I still really want to do that. And I think I was at the time, I was maybe 26, 27 at this point. And I was like, man, I still feel like I'm young enough to give this a shot. I owe it to myself to try one more time. So I went and I finally had the ankle surgery. I had a full ankle reconstruction, and I enlisted in the Navy in 2019 or 2020. It was either right before COVID or COVID. And so I was trying to go in on the enlisted side the second time, which is a slightly different process. You don't have to go to SOAS. You just have to get a contract by posting certain PT scores. And so I was competing for a enlisted, what they call an SO, special operator contract, and was in the delayed entry program, had raised my right hand, sworn into the Navy, gone through the whole medical everything, and was competing for it. And I was working out in my garage and was doing power cleans, and my left hamstring just popped, and I tore my left hamstring in 2. And so back in the doctor's office, you know, I had to pull out of the delayed entry program. I got out of DEP because I had a hamstring out of rehab, and I spent about a year and a half rehabbing my hamstring and trying to put muscle back on my leg, and was starting to develop some knee issues from all the other complications. And so I DEP'd back into the Navy, joined the Navy a 3rd time when I was 29, and finally got my SEAL contract, like the crown achievement of my entire life. I signed it literally on my 30th birthday.
Wow.
Which is already super old to be pursuing that. I mean, it's definitely a young man's game. And I'm at this point, I'm ankle surgery, hamstring tear, cartilage damage in both knees. I'd stress fractured my collarbone and was trying to do this. And, you know, I look back and in hindsight, I heard God telling me to give it up a long time before I actually did. But I was so gung-ho on doing it that signed the contract on my 30th birthday, had a ship date, was ready to go. And then a month before I was supposed to go to boot camp, bro, I was squatting in the gym and my right meniscus tore. And it was at that point when I got down on my knees and I was like, okay, God, what am I supposed to do?
Like actually, like, so at this point you're like actually like asking God that you don't really know who or what is.
Well,
yet.
So at this point I'd come into faith, man. I guess I kind of skipped over that, but over the course of my 20s, it started when I was working in Hollywood. Man, God just chose that as the season to like come after me. And all of a sudden, everybody was inviting me to church. Like I was in a play with somebody, and one of the actress's boyfriends invited me to church. And it ended up being the church that I went to for the next 7 years. But I was starting to believe in God because I'd had some kind of, you know, starting with that audible voice when I was in Jordan, and then just interesting experiences where someone would come into my life and they'd ask to pray for me. And they'd pray for like the exact specific thing that I was going. It was just wild what was happening. And it wasn't like an isolated, like, oh, I think I misinterpreted. No, it was like day after day after day. It was like something would come into my life where I was like, why, how in the world can I explain that? But I wasn't quite sold on the Jesus thing. So I would go to church and I would sing the worship songs because I was starting to be, okay, there's a God. I believe in God, but I don't know if I can just pick Jesus. And then it became, you know, spending more time in church and diving into the history of the word and the history of Jesus and learning how much history was written about Jesus and how verifiably he is a historical figure.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that there was information about Jesus that wasn't just the Bible.
Yeah.
I thought it was this like circular reasoning where it was like, well, the Bible says Jesus is real because Jesus is real.
Sure.
And I didn't realize that there was more history written about Jesus than pretty much any other historical figure of the era by a large margin. And yeah, man, so I definitely came into faith over the course of my 20s, but I know we're kind of skipping around a little bit. But at this point, when I was 30, I got down on my knees. I was like, Lord, what's next? And he just told me to give up the SEAL thing. And I finally felt like it was time to do it. So
What's up, guys? I am Jasper Charles, the podcast producer here at Wild and Kingdom, and I'm also a songwriter-singer here in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's safe to say I love music, as all of us do here at Wild and Kingdom. And a bunch of the guys that we hunt with, a bunch of people that we bring on this show, guests for the podcast, they are songwriters and they are artists. And so we wanted to highlight some artists that we know, and even those we don't know, who are doing a good service of putting out good, clean, sometimes even Christian-based country music in Nashville. And so we started our own Spotify playlist called Wild and Kingdom Country by Wild and Kingdom on Spotify. So if you're looking for some good substance country music, go check that out on Spotify at Wild and Kingdom. Because of everything you've went through in your love for the military, that definitely transitioned you into why you love guns so much right now.
yeah, man. I've been obsessed with guns, and I think obsessed, I don't even mind using that word, since I was, right around the same time, probably even before I made the decision that I wanted to join the military when I was in the 4th grade. I was the kid, biting his graham cracker into a pistol as a, kindergartner. That was me, man. My dad, I think it's genetic a little bit. My dad has a antique gun collection. And so I was just kind of around them from a young age. And he taught me to shoot when I was probably 7 or 8. But man, my dad was definitely pro-gun. My mom's not necessarily anti-gun, but she certainly wasn't pro her kid having a gun. So back in the day, man, you could mail cash to airsoft companies and they would send you stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a credit card when I was like 13 years old. So I remember getting the cash together, mailing it off to an airsoft company. And then they mailed me an airsoft AR-15 when I was like 13 years old. So I've always been really into them, man. As soon as I could shoot with my dad, I was. And then I was dry firing my airsoft gun. I was shooting BBs out my bedroom window into the backyard fence when I was a kid, and just have always been into them.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, for those of you who maybe this is your first time watching Wild and Kingdom, like I said, half of this is the podcast, half of this is the show. And so the show that we shot with you at the gun range was kind of breaking down the fundamentals of carrying. And it wasn't extremely technical in the field, but it was kind of a where to start and where to go next. And from what I gathered from that, and I am someone who carries, but it sounds like if you're someone who's interested in it, the first place to start would be find a gun that's comfortable to you.
Totally.
The next part would be figure out what's comfortable on your body to carry, whether that's front pocket, back pocket, waistband, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock appendix. And once you've decided on those two things, one, the gun, two, how you're going to carry it, it's consistency and it's repetition and it's practicing. But there was some things you brought up about distance and dry firing that I think was super helpful to someone who actually either A, doesn't carry at all and is thinking about it, or even someone who does carry but doesn't practice with it. Because I think there's something to be said about, look, dude, what I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I was like 19 when I could get my carry permit in Alabama back then.
Oh, is it that young in Alabama?
It was.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to take a course.
Okay.
I didn't have to take a class.
Right.
All you had to do is bring your driver's license to the sheriff's department, do a background check, and they handed it to you over the counter.
Yeah.
So there was no like, here's the 5 things you need to know. It was just like, hey, you're free to go buy a pistol now.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any of that talk. So let's talk about that just for a little bit.
Absolutely.
And kind of hit those high marks on what you should do if you've already gone through the process of selecting the right gun and you figured out where to carry it. What would you do next to be comfortable with the pistol you're carrying?
Yeah, man. With shooting, there's so many different ways to shoot. Like, we were on the range and we were doing a lot of up close and a lot of really fast shooting, a lot of sort of self-defense shooting. But I'd say you got to learn basic marksmanship principles before you can learn to shoot quickly. So for self-defense shooting, going back to 25 yards and trying to hit the bullseye, that's not necessarily the most effective way to learn to shoot quickly. Sure. But you also need to know how to do that, because you need to know how to make a great sight picture, how to be consistent, trigger squeeze, consistent trigger pull, so that you're not jerking the barrel of the gun. And I said this to you on the range, and I tell everyone who's getting into shooting this, 80% of becoming a great shooter is dry fire, is getting that gun, pointing at a spot on the wall, making sure it's obviously clear, and pulling the trigger and hearing the trigger, the striker go click.
I'm just going to double down on him right now and just say for anyone that didn't hear it when he said it, make sure the firearm is clear before you're doing this.
Yeah.
Please do that.
Yeah, you got to adhere to the 4 basic safety principles, but definitely make sure, I mean, the general dry fire procedure is you take the mag out, you put the ammo in a separate room, you make sure it's clear. You don't want to start conflating different procedures. So like if you normally load your gun, put it in the holster when it's loaded and walk out the door. Well, if you take the mag out, put it in the holster, and you're not really putting the ammo separate or make a concerted effort to keep everything separate, you might forget, is the gun loaded? Is the gun not loaded? That's why the first rule of gun safety is treat the gun like it's loaded at all times, because you might think, oh, I unloaded it and put it in the safe. And then you pull it out and you think, yeah, it's unloaded, and you don't safety check it, but actually this time you did put it away loaded. So always safety check the gun. If there's any new shooters listening to this, make sure you're safe, ammo in a separate room. But that being said, once you're safe, once you're clear, find a spot on the wall, hang a target on the wall, point it at, the TV or something, if you're watching a movie, and just consistently pull that trigger, because so many new shooters, they anticipate recoil and they jerk the barrel of the gun, or they change something about the way they're pulling the trigger right before the gun goes off because they're anticipating that recoil. And I've taken so many new shooters to the range, and they're jerking. And then as soon as I take the ammo out of the gun, I say dry fire it, and they know it's not going to recoil, they can pull the trigger smoothly and not see the barrel of the gun move. But if you are doing that, if you do have bad habits and the gun is hot and you're shooting, you're not going to be able to see the barrel of the gun move, because the recoil is going to mask any movement of the gun. And so you're going to be, impacting low left or low right or whatever it is, and you're not going to know why you're doing it. But if you're dry firing and there's no recoil from the gun, you're going to be able to see exactly what the muzzle of your gun's doing, and you're going to know your trigger pull is smooth and straight to the rear of the gun.
Yeah, I love that. I thought that was a great tip. Obviously, again, as long as you're being safe while you do it, because I didn't think about that when you explained it to me. Like, you can't see those things that you're doing when the recoil is happening.
Yeah.
But you can see them when you're just dry firing, if you're jerking the gun, if you're moving the barrel, if you're tipping it up or down. And I thought that was a really great tip.
And you save a ton of money too. I think a lot of shooters either are a little intimidated by the fact that, shooting's an expensive hobby,
right?
No doubt about it. But you can get really, really good at shooting and not spend a whole lot of money, because 80% of all of the fundamentals, think about it, the recoil happens after you pull the trigger. So 90% of shooting happens before the bullet goes out of the gun.
Yeah.
And that 90% is the same 90% of you dry firing an empty gun.
Yeah. I'm a massive fan of just all things everyday carry. I'm a huge knife fan, huge watch fan, huge multi-tool fan, huge if I can put it in my pocket and it can solve a problem fan.
Love it.
If I can, but on that, to me, everyday carry, like, I literally see it like an extension of myself. And there's extensions of my everyday carry.
Yeah.
Like, there's always something in my pocket. There's always something in my backpack. I always have my backpack. If it's not on me, it's in the truck. And then I have a whole different separate mindset of carry for my truck. And like, it literally feels like an extension of me. Like, especially my knives or the multi-tools. And Jason's favorite multi-tool of mine is the Leatherman Arc, which we've talked on here a whole lot. And his favorite thing to say about that is that it works a whole lot better when it's in your pocket. And right now it's not. It is in the backpack though, over there behind him.
Yeah, man.
So would you consider your gun an extension of yourself?
Yeah, I have enough rounds to it at this point where it really just feels like an extension of my hand. It feels so natural in my hand. And, a lot of shooters, one misconception is that a good shooter is a good shooter on all guns. That's not true at all. You can be a great shooter on one type of gun, and if you're a Glock guy and then you go to a Smith & Wesson and all of a sudden the recoil impulse is different. The grip feels different in your hand. When you pull the trigger, it's not the same geometry between your index finger and where the gun is seated in your hand because the grip's different.
Right.
There are so many different factors that go from one gun to the next. So like, I've been shooting the same type of gun my entire life, and I'm a Glock guy, and I picked Glocks really early on. And I just have so many rounds to it at this point. It feels like my hand.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about all things everyday carry, especially like, I'm the same way with knives. And I'm not a knife collector. I don't like search out the new thing or the vintage thing or like the whatever. I'm really in search of like the one that's going to be the best for me, and then I don't want another one.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, and he's heard me say this a million times about other gear that I use. Like, I want to find the thing that I love so much that if I lost it right now, I'd go buy it tomorrow and I wouldn't think twice about it, regardless of how much it costs. And it does come down to, how comfortable is it? How does it fit in my hand? Like, I did get a new knife recently on a Black Friday deal. It was a Spyderco, and Spyderco is like a great brand that everyone has, and I've never had one.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm gonna bite the bullet. I'm gonna get away from Benchmade for a minute, which is what I've been spending my money on. And I'm gonna get a Spyderco. Dude, I hate it. And Spyderco's awesome, but like the
it's just not what you're used to.
Yeah, like my hand fits perfectly, or the knife fits perfectly in my hand for my Benchmade, and it's got the perfect ergonomics, and I like the way that it feels, and I don't want to get anything else.
Dude, I'm laughing because you said like having something for every category, and you like when you have one, you don't need another one.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy when I add guns to my collection. Is like what I look at guns like tools in a toolbox. But just because you have one screwdriver, doesn't mean you don't need another screwdriver with the that's a different size and Phillips head versus flathead. So you buy one gun for one specific subset of things you want to do with it, and then you think, okay, like I'm pretty good, and then 2 weeks later, it's like, well, there's this other thing over here.
Yeah, no, I do that.
I don't have one that does that.
Yeah, I just meant I wasn't a collector in the sense of like they're going to sit in the safe and they look pretty. I do have one for multiple things though.
No, but I want purpose-driven tools. Yeah. I don't really put together like range toys.
Sure.
I'm like, what problem is this going to solve? 100%. Like, and there's sort of subsets of each problem.
Right.
But it has to be a purpose-driven thing. I don't put things in my safe just to have something in the safe. It's never been. It has to have an objective. It has to have a purpose.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way, and kind of blending all the things that we've talked about on this podcast now with your backstory and guns being a major thing and faith. For those of you who didn't watch the show, again, go watch it. At the beginning of it in the intro, we talked about carry and how we obviously carry and we love to carry.
Yeah. But
we're in America, and there's this just never ending conversation around guns anyways, whether you carry them or keep them at home. It doesn't matter. If guns are brought up, it can be controversial depending on who you're talking to. And so what I want to ask you is your thought process on Christians. Should Christians be carrying if they're comfortable with that? And should a Christian be comfortable defending themselves in a situation where it could literally mean life or death?
Totally. I think that's a great conversation to have. And it's something that I think everybody who carries needs to have that serious conversation with themselves, because the short answer is absolutely yes. I think that it comes down to we're made in the image of God, and so every life is sacred because we were created by the ultimate creator. And so I think we're not only allowed to, but obligated to, compelled to, and it's something we should strive to do to protect innocent life. It really depends on your posture, but I think every single person who's going to carry a gun really needs to have that honest conversation with himself. This is Christian or not. Like, am I willing to actually take a life? Like, do I like the idea of carrying a gun, or am I genuinely willing to use it to take a life?
That's a really good point.
Because I think a lot of guys who carry guns just really like guns, like the idea of having one. It makes them feel a little more secure when they're pumping gas at night. But are you genuinely prepared to use it for what it's meant for? Because, and this is kind of a controversial point of view, but I thoroughly believe it, so I have no problem saying it. Like, I think people who are gun advocates like to tone down, like they like to say guns are sporting goods. Guns are not sporting goods. Guns are designed for taking lives, full stop. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they are absolutely designed for that. And if you're going to have them, you need to be prepared to do it, and you need to be prepared to use it for that purpose. Now, that being said, if you're a responsible gun owner, you are going to walk around, and you're responsible Christian and you're strong in your faith, you're not going to be walking around looking for a fight. Right. I think the heart posture is one of the most important things. Are you out there trying to prove yourself, trying to feel like a big shot, trying to pull your gun out and wave? And you see videos of people doing this all the time where it's like, you're just trying to be a tough guy, and that's so stupid. Like, a true person, a true Christian is going to be prepared to do that, but is not going to do that unless there are absolutely no other options. That is, if your back is put against the wall and someone who is an aggressor is going to take your life or the life of someone who is innocent, then you have the green light. But until that point, you take your ego out of it, you defuse at every possible opportunity, and you walk away at every opportunity you have not to pull the gun, you don't. But that being said, if the time comes to do it, you do it quickly, and you better be prepared to do it. And if you're not prepared to do it, don't carry a gun.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said about that whole thing. Like, I took a shooting class with my girlfriend, and I think it was the best thing that I've ever done because we got to hear stories about people that were on both sides of that, that were or were not prepared and what comes with it. And it's not something that a lot of people talk about when you first get into carrying. I think you're absolutely correct to say that as a Christian, we do have an obligation to defend innocent life when and if that ever was to happen to you. However, to your point, if you're not prepared for that, if you are not trained for that, you're going to do more damage to anyone around you than you would not.
Totally.
And there's a guy, and I might say his last name wrong, but you probably know him actually, John Lavelle.
Oh, yeah. Warrior Poet Society.
And I'm pretty sure it was in that book that I read that he talked about this specific issue. And he was like, you should be fully prepared and like dialed in with that weapon if you were to use it, but look for every reason to never pull it out of your holster.
Totally. And that I almost pulled my gun one time. As someone who's carried for years now, for over a decade, I've only had one situation where I actually had my hand on my gun, and it was the calmest I've ever been because the other guy had a baseball bat and I had a gun, and so I didn't really particularly feel threatened, but I also recognized like I could get into a shouting match with this guy. I could let my ego start speaking for me, or I could apologize to the guy and I could say, "You're right, sir. I'm completely in the wrong," and that's exactly what I did. And he got back in his car with his baseball bat, but I was pulling out of a gas station the light was red, and I was pulling out of the gas station to take the first position of the light. This dude was way back, and he sped up to get in front of me and then rolls down his window and like starts yelling at me for cutting him off, which was already kind of an absurd thing to do. And then he grabs a baseball bat and he starts to get out of his car. And I think, oh my goodness, what is happening right now? And I just said, you know what, sir, I'm so sorry. I cut you off. I was so stupid. And you just take your ego completely out of it because that's absolutely the best solution. And he keeps yelling at me, but he gets back in his car. And, I don't mind my ego taking a hit. I have really no ego when it comes to no escalation of an incident. But that should be everyone's posture. And I think everyone who's going to carry a gun should really go through the mental reps of how do I de-escalate every situation, and literally you can run mental reps. Like, what do I say? How do I take my ego out of it? Do I know myself well enough to know that I can do that easily? Or am I the guy who's going to say, oh, you offended me, now let me come back at you? If that's you, think about it. Do some mental reps.
I totally agree. Before I say anything else, I know you have thoughts on this. Would you like to add anything to that from maybe a biblical lens?
Oh, man. It's a big debate. It's a big debate. I know a few years ago, John Piper, who, you'd be crazy not to admire John Piper. Piper is just an amazing man of God. And he came out with a big theological stance on that Christians should never defend themselves, that you should just not do that. And I disagree with that. But I absolutely, his position was well grounded. I think there's a difference between being a victim and a martyr. A martyr was Charlie Kirk, just defending the faith and verbally and trying to live at peace with everybody, and somebody killed him. That's martyrdom. If somebody wants to martyr me for sharing the gospel, then they just martyr me. It just comes with the job for all of us that are Christians, right? In a situation where somebody's being harmed, or the world's full of demons and the world's full of the demonic, and I'm not gonna let you harm somebody. I'm not going to let you harm me or just anything. I think you have an obligation to defend life. I agree. And that's a big issue. And that goes back to the point Kevin was making a minute ago, which was, gun only you can only do that if you carry a gun. It doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter. You have to carry a gun. You're just a victim if you're not.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot with this. I don't know if you know the verse, and I'm pretty sure it's Old Testament.
I've got some scripture queued up over here ready to go.
I bet it's one of the ones that I have, and it's about defending the household from an enemy coming in, and it's
Exodus 22:2. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him.
It wasn't that one. That's another one that I read about the other day.
Yeah.
But it was whatever it was. He was talking to the village, telling them there is evil coming upon us. There are men coming for us. You need to take up your swords, and you need to defend your brother, your sisters, your family. Like, he was telling them, you were obligated to defend your household if someone comes for it. I'll put it on the screen or something when I find the exact one.
It up.
I don't remember which one it was. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, not specifically.
I'll find it and I'll put it on the screen for.
Well, Jesus said, "Let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one." So the owning of a weapon was clearly not condemned by Jesus. Again, it's not the weapon by itself, the sword, the firearm. It's a tool. It's the person who uses it, the intent behind how it's used, whether that's justified or not, that makes all the difference. But in Proverbs 24:11, rescue those being led away to death, hold back those staggering towards slaughter. Like, I think it's not only an option for Christians, but I think it's a scriptural commandment that if you have the ability to protect someone who's being led away to death, whether it's you, your family, innocent people around you, you are not only allowed to, but obligated to stand up and do something about it. I think you're commanded to. And so I look at the Second Amendment. I think it's one of the most beautiful parts of the entire Constitution, but really one of the most beautiful parts of any government document that's ever been written. And I don't look at it as an option. I look at it as a responsibility. Like, because it's for so much more than, people like to frame it as, it's a self-defense thing. No, it's not. It's for the maintenance of the republic. And I think it's the obligation of every healthy and able young male and woman, if you're willing and able, to not only know how to shoot, or not only to learn to shoot, but be good at shooting.
Sure.
I think it's a responsibility bestowed upon us by the founding fathers of this country. And I think if you refer to the scripture and you look at what Jesus said and look what scripture commands, we are absolutely obligated to protect innocent life.
I couldn't agree more. I think, unless you have something else to add, I think I'm in full agreement here.
Yeah, Jesus in the sword comment, that's an interesting one. I'm going to have to look deeper into the context of that, because I haven't thought about that in a long time. He told Peter to put down the sword,
right?
But he was putting down the sword, to Kevin's point, the de-escalating. Hey, this is 100%. What has to happen.
Yeah.
I have to go to the cross.
Right.
I have to do this. That's martyrdom and for the ultimate prize. So yeah, it's a heavy topic. It's a heavy issue to be in a situation. At the end of the day, we are told, "Thou shalt not murder," right? We know that, but you got scriptures. Go through them, see what they say.
Yeah, and again, scripture's full of things.
You want to pull any of the other ones up and read them on here?
Those are the main ones that I had queued up, ready to go. I'm just reading them off my phone here, but I have a couple more about sort of the heart posture around it. Like, for instance, Romans 12:19, "Beloved, never revenge yourselves." Like, there's the turn the other cheek is often, I think, what people like Piper quote, and they say, well, this is how you're supposed to react to adversity. This is what you're supposed to react to threats. But I think the intention behind turn the other cheek is you don't let your ego speak, kind of what we were saying about de-escalation. Like, if someone's, insulting you, if it's, coming at you, but not in a way where you're physically threatened, like, yes, we are supposed to turn the other cheek, but there's a line where that crosses into, no, I'm not going to be a victim. As you were saying, Jason, I'm not going to let someone else be a victim if I have the ability to step in.
Sure.
But again, one of the most important things to remember is you're not walking around looking for a fight. If you find yourself walking around looking for a fight, you shouldn't be carrying it.
Yeah,
down.
totally.
Put it away. Sell it.
Yeah.
I don't even want you to have it.
Right.
It is a defensive tool that is to be used against evil, full stop.
I think I'm in full agreement on the same points with you there about being a protector, but doing it smartly and doing it righteously. Back to the everyday carry thing, though, because again, I guess I am an EDC
This is my favorite part of the conversation, of course.
I would love to know what your everyday carry setup is, and then I'll kind of flip back and tell you mine.
Yeah, man, I always laugh at myself every night. There's a place, I have this shelf in my bedroom where I line it up in the same order every night because I'm slightly OCD about it, and I'm always laughing at myself of how much stuff I pull out of my pockets. It's like 7 or 8 items, but my main carry is Glock 19. I carry it in an Appendix holster. This is it right here. I run a red dot on it. I run a flashlight on it. Statistically, the majority of self-defense incidents happen at night, so I always make sure to have that, because you need another aspect we should touch on briefly is if you can't positively identify what you're going to shoot at, don't pull the trigger.
That's a great point.
I like running a red dot. This is, I think, the future of handguns. It's faster. It's a single point of focus versus 2 points of focus with 2 iron sights. And instead of having to look at the front sight, you can project your focus onto the target, so your situational awareness is a little higher. I've never had a malfunction with this gun. I've run thousands of rounds through it, so it will always be my preferred everyday carry handgun. I also carry a fixed blade sheath knife right here. This is made by 511. It's got the little index finger ring right there, so that if you pull it out and then you have to dry your handgun, you can keep your grip on it and without having to drop the knife. I have never cut even a box with this knife. This knife is not a work knife. This is a self-defense tool, so it stays in the holster. It is never, I never want to dull the blade. This thing needs to be ready to go. And so that stays in my waistband next to my gun at all times. I also carry a utility knife, just the Gerber folding knife.
We checked this out the other day and talked about it a little bit.
It's good. I was cutting some boxes with it the other day. I'm not a particular knife snob. To me, if it cuts, it's good to go. I'm much more nuancy when it comes to guns. But this was sort of the right price point, and I like the action, and it's, works for me. It looks good. It's solid. So, a nice Gerber folding knife. And then I carry, in addition to, cell phone, wallet, keys, all the basics, I just carry a spare magazine. Yep. So, I never want to have to use this, but if I ever get into a situation, I'm a big believer in I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it, not have it, which is sort of why I carry a gun in the first place. But then if I'm, it doesn't take up any extra room, I index it off my wallet so it's in the same position, bullets facing forward, so that I can pull it, index it with my index finger, put it right into the gun. I've trained that reload out of the jeans pocket 10,000 times, and, in case I need it, there it is. So that's kind of the gist of what I carry on me at all times.
You showed me the extra magazine in your pocket at the range. And I thought that was interesting because, dude, I've watched too many, honestly, like everyday carry videos on YouTube. I've followed all the pages before. And so many dudes are like into like the full tactical setup, the waistband now, where it's like pistol, 2 mags attached to the holster next to it, and then the knife. And I'm like, dude, how do y'all breathe, bro? How do y'all drive your car? Yeah,
man, like we touched on, I think a lot of guys enjoy feeling tactical, and I'm just all about what's practical. To me, the pocket works fine. I can get in there, pull it out. Again, it's all comes down to personal preference, what works for you, your body type, what kind of gun you want to carry, what else you have in your pockets, but just make sure you drill it and just drill it time and time again. And when you look at self-defense shootings, man, it's such a big dump of adrenaline that you'll see guys just burn through a magazine. And if you break down FBI statistics on FBI agent shooting, their hit percentage is like 20%. And these are like trained FBI law enforcement agents. And in FBI shootings, I believe it's like 2 out of 10 bullets actually hit the target. It might even be less than that. I might be butchering the statistics. It's definitely no more than that. So if you think about what's going to happen to the average person who probably doesn't have as much training as an FBI agent, when that adrenaline hits, they might burn through a mag. They might not hit anything. And then if you're out of ammo, out of luck. Sure. And so I just I'd rather have 2 if it's not going to take up any extra room.
Totally. Yeah, it makes sense. I haven't started on the carrying the extra mag thing. So mine's a little bit different. And mine's, honestly, mine's not as ritualistic as yours is, where it's like same thing, same place. All my stuff stays in the same place. But it's like I said earlier, like my things are extended past my body sometimes because I never leave the house without my backpack. It's like in the front of my backpack, there's literally like a little zip pouch where like there's things that stay in there. If my Leatherman multi-tool's not in my pocket, it's in that every day. And that's in the truck or it's on my back. So like I always have it. It just might not always be in my pocket.
Totally.
And I think I wake up and I choose what to carry in my pocket depending on what I'm doing that day. So if I don't have a reason to be carrying all the multi-tools that come on the Leatherman, I'm not bringing it. But like when we're turkey hunting for the most part, if I'm doing something where I'm in the field and I'm shooting my cameras, I will. Because I can get to my screwdrivers on the thing fast. But if I'm just going through a normal day, I'm carrying my Benchmade Osborne every time, which is all my stuff. It's funny that we're doing this. None of it's in my pocket. I took all of it out when we got here in case I wanted to switch it up for this. A flashlight. The flashlight's always in the center console in the same spot of my truck. It's super thin. And I only carry it if I know I'm going to do something with it. And then I have been getting way better about carrying my firearm actually in my waistband. And I've been forcing myself to do it for things I normally wouldn't. Like I'm going to the grocery store and I know it's going to be 5 minutes, but I'm like, okay, we're carrying it then. Like the only time I'm not trying to carry that is if it's somewhere I know I can't. And when I can't, like, just to be fair, like when we go to our Bible study, like I don't have it in my waistband, but it's in my backpack.
Don't worry, I do.
I know you do. And I know there's other people in there that do too. And so I'm like, I'll have it in my backpack and whatever. So mine looks a little bit different, but the essentials of what I carry in my pocket and what they're there for are the same every day. I just kind of fluctuate depending on what the day looks like.
Totally, man. Yeah, I think that you brought up a really interesting point, which is sort of multi-levels of everyday carry, like your truck being sort of a secondary level. So there's only so much you can have on your body at one time, but you can throw a bag in the truck that has all kinds of stuff in it. So depending on the situation, I think we're going to talk about it in a little bit. I have a little pistol caliber carbine with a folding stock and a removable suppressor that I can throw in the back of a backpack. It's a 6.5, 7-inch barrel, folds up, fits in the back of a backpack. And then the backpack opens up a whole nother world of possibilities. So I have medical in there. I have a full IFAK. I've got multiple tourniquets.
Yeah, we could be here for another hour doing that.
Yeah, man.
I have a whole backpack and a whole toolbox and a whole under this seat and under that seat and the whatever. Like, it just never ends.
I've got I put a chest rig in there that I can throw on that has 3 extra magazines and more medical, a flashlight, and another tournament.
Like a small militia in your car.
It's just like you never know what you're gonna need.
Yeah,
and I know maybe that sounds a little obsessive, but I just kind of I'd rather have it. And not need it
too. I'd rather be prepared
than need it and not have it. And I want to make sure that I make this clear. Like I pray to God that I never have to use any of these things. Because if I have to use any of these things, it means I had to confront evil, that I'm willing, prepared, and ready every single day to confront it. I'm not scared of it in the slightest. But I hope that evil doesn't exist. I hope that I'm not confronted, because that means either I or someone else is confronted with it. I don't ever want to have to do that. I don't want to take a life, but I'm prepared to. And that's the difference.
I think that sums up the main question we were trying to talk about just a minute ago.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for doing this podcast. Thank you for going to the range and shooting the show with us. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you a little bit more. For those of you listening or watching, as I've said now, 5 times, this is a 2-part thing. So if you haven't watched the show where we're in the field with Kevin at the gun range, please go check that out. And I would love to know from those of you who do or do not carry, those fellow Christians, brothers and sisters in Christ, if you have a different opposing opinion than we do about carrying, please drop it in the comments. Let us know why. Or if you're in agreement with us, let us know actually what you're carrying, even if it's not a firearm. I love knowing what's in people's pockets. So drop it in the comments. Let us know what you're carrying. And most importantly, as Jason always says, please smash that subscribe button. Go to our website, wildandkingdom.com. Drop your email in there. And again, we're not doing that just so we have all your information. It's a way for us to let you know every month when our episodes are coming out, both for the show and the podcast. So we appreciate y'all. We actually have just recently surpassed our 1,000th subscriber on YouTube.
Let's go.
We appreciate all of you being here. Thank you for the love on that. And we'll see you on the next episode.
God bless y'all.